Hello, my name is Paige Radford. I have chose to do my speech on whether or not sexual education should be taught in public schools. In my opinion, I do feel like this is a very important subject that should be taught in public schools. However, I do believe that 6th grade, which I do believe is what they here in the county is what grade they do teach it in, or anyway, that's what I was taught in 6th grade. I was taught about sexual education. I do believe that they should do it about 7th or 8th grade. I believe the kids are a little more mature, and I believe they take heed to it a little more at that age. I feel like our younger society needs to be brought up in a way knowing right from wrong and when to engage in sexual activity. I do believe that our public schools should teach this. However, I have a feeling that I believe they should encourage abstinence a little more. Abstinence, as you all know, is abstaining from sex until marriage. I believe that this is very important, and I believe that this should be taught to all kids of all ages. I think they should know the emotional attachment that comes with being sexually active, what kind of emotions it can bring not only to a woman or a girl, but to the man as well, or the boy. I believe if you're classified as a girl and a boy, then you are too young to be engaging in sexual activity. I believe that along with abstinence, they should also teach about the STDs and the proper way of protecting yourself from getting pregnant. I believe they should teach you about condoms and what they can actually protect you from. There are sexually transmitted diseases that you can catch and that are curable. You can take an antibiotic and get rid of this. However, most of the STDs are lifelong, meaning that this is something that you will carry for the rest of your life. It's really not a joke, and most people take it lightly, and I believe that it should be stressed to our young people more so now than ever. I also feel like it should be optional. I know that a lot of times they make this a mandatory class for all students, but I feel like this is something that should be an option. I myself, as a child, I was never taught about the birds and the bees, so the first thing I ever learned about it was in school. I do not believe that at the time that I was taught sexual education, I do not believe that I was taught the proper way. I don't think that they encouraged abstinence enough, so therefore I felt like I lacked something. And my parents were kind of one of those shy, more I guess you could call old school type of parents who never liked to bring up the word sex in our home. So I was a teenager before I really ever found out about sexual intercourse and the things that came along with it, so therefore I feel like I had to learn things on my own. The reason I feel like it should be optional is because there are some parents who are going to talk to their children about this subject. They are going to sit down and they are going to have a heart-to-heart with them. They are going to tell them the things that they need to do if they decide to be sexually active. I think, first of all, the parents should strongly encourage abstaining. But if they do not abstain, I believe that they should teach them how to use condoms, how to prevent these things that are going to happen to them. That I do not believe that the schools should make it mandatory for the teachers, because then there's going to be some other parents who this may offend them. They feel like that they may think that they're not doing their job. So whereas you have the responsible side of parenting, where parents are actually going to sit down and talk to their children about this, I feel that there is a less responsible, and maybe not responsible, but in my case I had old school parents who refused to talk about sex. So I feel that for me, sexual education was a bonus. That was something that I needed. So that I think they should make it optional for parents who maybe don't have the guile to stand up and talk to their children about this, or maybe they just don't care about what their children do. So I think that is where the school needs to step in, and they need to teach their children right from wrong. Not necessarily right from wrong in the world about how we do things, but right from wrong in sexual activity. They should teach them abstaining, STDs, and how to prevent pregnancies. I have a few statistics that I would like to show with you, and I have my visual aid, and while she's crying, I'll go ahead and show you her. This is my visual aid. This is my daughter, Sage. She is 9 months old. I don't know if you can see her. There she is. She is 9 months old. However, I'm married. I had her in marriage, and she's telling you hi. She's wanting to get the video recorder. Even though I was married and I have a son who is 2, even though I was married when I had my children, I was also a teenager. I was married at 18 and I had my son at 19. So I'm going to share a few statistics with you. Here you go. Here you go. Here you go. Okay. My statistics are this. 34% of teenagers have at least one pregnancy before the age of 20. So in my case, I was 20 when I had her. So therefore, I had 2 pregnancies by the age of 20. Even though I was married, I was still a teenager. I mean, I still went through probably some of the things that a teenager would do. But at least I had a spouse to go through those things with. Speaking of spouses, it tells me here that 79% of teens that became pregnant were not married. So that means 79%. There is only 21% of teenagers out there who are actually married before. So I fall in that 21% category who was married before I decided to have children. It says also that 80% of pregnancies that occur in teenagers are accidents. That means basically that they are unintended. They were not planned. They were something that maybe the person either was too lazy to use protection or they just weren't knowledgeable about it. Maybe they didn't know what a condom was. Maybe they were 14 and this was their first time and this is the first maybe encounter that they had with this kind of subject matter. So therefore, they became pregnant, and guess what? There's 80% of people out there. There are 80% of children who are considered accidents because maybe the parent was not informed. 25% of teenage mothers who have had one child have their second child within 2 years of having their first. So they have one child, and by 2 years later, 25% more of those teenage mothers have the second child. If you ask me, I think it should be, oops, it happened one time, oops, it happened a second time, but there's no oops. I mean, you know what caused it the first time. Be a little smarter the second time. 1/3 of teenage mothers complete high school. So that means there is only 1/3 of teenage mothers out there that actually go on to finish their high school and get their high school diploma. That says a lot. I mean, having a child, I had Ryder when I had just graduated from high school. I graduated in June and I had him the following February. So I was actually out of school before I got pregnant with him, but still, I mean, I made sure that was my goal, to finish school, and I was married also when I graduated. So therefore, I mean, I had a couple more things going for me, but I really believe that our teenagers should be taught these things. I think they are lacking the discipline and the knowledge that they need in order to prevent these things from happening. I dropped my paper. Hold on one second. Okay. All right. I also got this as a idea to show you what these unwanted pregnancies can lead to. $7 billion is spent every year. $7 billion is spent by the United States due to pregnancies of teenagers. That means that if a parent or a child, might as well say, becomes pregnant, 9 times out of 10 they're going to be coming on welfare. So the U.S. is having to pay these dollars in order to kind of keep these children up. $7 billion per year up until this point is what is being spent on teen pregnancy. Also, I did this one as a little fun thing because I probably fall into the 67 percentile. I am 67% of the people who had sex before they were ready to wish they would have waited until marriage. I fall into that 67 percentile. I wish that I would have waited until I was married. I feel that sex is something very important and that it should be between one man and one woman who is biblically married. I believe that we should go by the Bible and go by what God says about it, and they should be married before they have intercourse. 60% of that was boys and 77% of that was girls. As I said earlier, girls have an emotional attachment that come along with teen pregnancy, so I feel that they kind of have a disadvantage. They get more attached more so than guys, and I really don't know how that's even possible. Like, I mean, it's the same thing, but yet for some reason us as girls, we are very emotional people, and so when we give ourselves away to that first person, we are going to be a little more vulnerable in the future. So basically, to conclude what I was trying to teach you guys tonight is that I do believe that sex ed should be taught. I believe that all teenagers should be taught before the age of, not really accountability as I said earlier, but just at an age where they're ready. I mean, I don't even know if there is such thing as a ready age to have sex, but I just feel that we should teach them the do's and the don'ts, the rights and the wrongs, and how to go about preventing our teen pregnancies in the future. And thank you for your time and have a good evening.